Hello and welcome to the AFP webinar, How to Talk to Your Board, Providing Long-Term Development Vision. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Marcy Heim. Marcy is an author, speaker, and coach for those transforming the world through philanthropy. Her direct and entertaining style reflects over 20 years of in-the-trenches major gift fundraising and management success, where she and her team raise millions by creating the genuine relationships she promotes in her popular sessions. Empowering Development Ambassadors is Marcy's book on major gift relationship building and the role of both methods and mindset in success. She's a graduate of AFP's Faculty Training Academy, has received a Case Crystal Apple and AFP Madison Chapter's Outstanding Fundraising Professional Award, and served as Philanthropy Day Chair. And with that, Marcy, the floor is all yours.
Oh, Jessica, thank you so much, and welcome, everybody. I would like to particularly give a shout-out to my local chapter, only a few blocks away from me. Woohoo! Glad that you're all there, and thank you today. Normally, I am at the chapter at our meetings, and I get to run the mechanics of these things, so I'm missing being with them all and glad they're here. I also want to say a special hello to all of my friends from Canada. I had a chance to see some of the folks signed up. We've got a great, great bunch from Canada, and hello, 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 everybody from Canada. Now, I want to, those of you that know and have heard me before know that I am all about mindset, and today we will spend some time talking about our mindset and how this impacts how we communicate and empower our board to help us in this wonderful work that we have in development. So I've decided we're about to have an incredible experience together. And those of you that know me know that I'm kind of a face-to-face kind of girl. I like to be in the room where I can see you all and watch you all and get your feedback. And if you saw me now, you'll see that I'm waving my hands around in my office. So I know that some of you who know me are smiling because you know that. But I am so grateful that AFP allows us to have these webinar experiences because it's a terrific way for so many of us to connect without leaving the office, without flying in a very economical way, and to be together. So thank you to AFP, and thank you to all of you who are taking the time to connect via this webinar and use that extra set of skills to stay focused and stay engaged in our conversation. So let's get started. And I'm still there we go. Let's get started. I'm curious if you would help me with this polling question. What is your biggest board challenge? And now you can only pick one. You can only pick one. So the board doesn't give or at a high enough level. The board doesn't help with fundraising. The board only wants data on dollars raised. The board doesn't see long-term or do any kind of planning. They're just always about what's happening this year, what's happening right now. The board micromanages. They're into how many pencils are you ordering this week instead of how do we increase the capacity of our organization. The board simply is not willing to invest enough time. They come to meetings, they eat the lunch, and they go home. They really don't take that time to kind of dig into the problems of the opportunities of the organization. So take a peek and take a chance here to kind of take a look at what you would call your most challenging issue. Okay, I'm taking a look at the results, and more than half have selected the board doesn't help with fundraising. That would be in line with what I hear, actually a little bit lower. And the board coming in second is the board doesn't give at a high enough level. Or it might be at all. Several of you will talk to me about the board not giving it at all. And the other thing, oh boy, now we're having a little bit of a change here. We have them not quite wanting to do that planning and investing the time. Those are much smaller components, though. So this is good. I'll tell you the other thing I'm pleased about seeing is the board only wants data on dollars raised. It didn't get a single vote. And I'm happy to see that because truly part of our challenge is to, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but to focus what we talk about with our boards to help them get that long-term vision we need. Okay, so why am I here today? Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you. And before I move to that, I want to have you all take a deep breath And understand that not all of the slides that you will see are in the printed out handout. I did that because I love trees. There's some that are just passing slides. There's some that aren't critical to your understanding of what I'm saying. So they're not all in there. It'll be okay, all right? It'll be okay. So you may not see each and every slide. I just wanted to say that. All right, so now why am I here? Well, first and foremost, to thank you. And I'd like to say that you've all invested your time to be here today. You've documented a willingness to continue to learn. And if you explore what makes successful people successful, the number one factor is that willingness to be a continuous lifelong learner. So bravo to you for being here. I also want to provide some new ways of thinking about old issues. Getting boards involved with our fundraising and development processes is not really a brand new thing, friends. It's kind of been around there a while. And it's sort of amazing to me as I've had an opportunity to work with more and more nonprofits and organizations in higher ed and all across the spectrum that our concerns are similar. Our concerns are very similar, and they kind of keep resurfacing. They're sort of the ones that are constantly out there. Another thing that I talk about a lot is that what we do in our professional life spills into our personal life, and what we do in our personal life spills into our professional life. And I want to give you some advice on how to think about these issues. And to encourage you, this kind of spills into my third point here, to encourage you to take action a little bit differently, or to take different action, or to have a different mindset about these things. And I'm going to take just 30 seconds here to share something I read in the paper just this morning. I start every day with my Wonder Word puzzle in the paper. We'll talk about Wonder Word a little later. But this is something that was in the paper today, and it's about a woman. It impacts our world. So I wanted to share it with you. Her name is Jen Gibbons, and she's 27 years old, and she's on a journey to do a 1,500-mile solo rowing journey. She's a crew member, was a crew member in college to raise money for breast cancer survivors, and she's blogging all the way around it, around this 1,500-mile journey that she's rowing around. And a man broke into her boat and sexually assaulted her while she was stopped and sleeping. Now, you know, sexual assault's an old issue, but this is what I want you to take away from this. This is what she said. She's more determined than ever to press on, and she is going to have the boat towed to a place and then bike to that spot, but then finish her final 115 miles back to Chicago. She said, "I still believe that life is a gift, even when it's scary and unfair. I still believe that life offers us the privilege, the opportunity, and the responsibility to give something back, even when people try to take things away from us." I found that so powerful, and I wanted to include it in our time together this morning. We are in an honorable and noble profession, my friends, and her gift back with her work with breast cancer survivors is really a wonderful testimony to what we all are involved with. So to move on, to provide a specific process for you to engage your board in the development work that we do, and finally to share 3 examples of case studies that I've personally been involved with that had successful outcomes at least once, and also some not quite successful options at other times. So first off, thank you. I had an opportunity once to sing with Maya Angelou. I admire this woman so much. And she said, "You want to compose a good world. It's an honorable and noble profession." And I believe that this could be our universal vision statement for those of us who work with nonprofits and in philanthropy. And I want to thank each and every one of you for helping us compose this good world. On this slide are my sons, RJ and David, taken a few years ago. Just took RJ through SOAR. He'll be a Badger at the UW. So things are really changing in our house, and the little guy is a big soccer person. I want the world to be a better place for them. That's why I have invested the time I've invested and try to share with you my personal calling in doing artful and thoughtful development work. So thank you all. Thank you all for being in our honorable and noble profession. Our agenda today, of course, we've had our poll one. I want to take a second, and this was at the suggestion of my home chapter. I want to make sure you understand what I won't be covering. I'm not going to be looking at specific financial analyses and say, well, do this or don't do that or don't do this. I'm not going there at all. I think that comes into, I will instead talk about the kinds of things we want to put in front of our board, not kind of trying to get into each and one of your financial analyses. I'm also not going to talk about governance. Now, I think basic governance is very, very important. The fact that we have some kind of term limits, the fact that we turn over our board, the fact that we get new blood on our board, the fact that we follow process. Process is extraordinarily important. Process in getting out agenda material, getting things out ahead of the meeting. Processes in how we select our board members, that we look for board members who share our values, who share our visions, aren't adding something to their resume, aren't there strictly because of capacity but have no interest. How we select our board members is part of that governance piece, and that's important. But a whole talk in and of itself. Our procedures, how we take the money bags to the bank, for example. I was involved in a situation where my band was part of a fundraiser and couldn't understand why I didn't hear back about how the whole event went. Well, turns out that the chamber manager took 2 money bags to the bank and 6 money bags home because nobody actually took the money bags with her. And she's now in jail, in prison. But it's still the way that left me feel. Those financial processes are extremely important, not today's topics, but extremely important. How we handle money, having that credibility, having that reputation for handling money correctly is so important. I will be covering examining your own mindset. How do you feel about working with your board? Then we'll be talking about our communication styles, about creating our own focus, Then we'll jump into a second polling question, and I'll have some questions and answers. We'll look at those 3 case studies and have some more questions as time permits. Your mindset. Your mindset impacts your work. It impacts your life. And you can't really separate the two. It's that overall spirit in which we embrace our profession, our role, responsibility, and, my friends, our opportunity to make this world a better place. I have been studying the power of our mindset since I was 17, and I'm a bit older now. And it started with a cassette, and I put the picture of a cassette on here for those of you that are going to go, a cassette? What's a cassette? Well, if you look behind that cassette, that's a 78 record. What's a 78 record? Well, it's older than a cassette. And in fact, in the year 1957, Earl Nightingale recorded The Strangest Secret. And I encourage each and every one of you to listen to this. You can download a copy of it free on the web. And in The Strangest Secret, he talked about the key to success and the key to failure. And that key is really quite simple. We become what we think about. We become what we think about. Now, the point I want to make here is some of you are saying, oh, I know this. Oh, I've heard this before. Be very, very careful. Oprah said our beliefs can move us forward in life or they can hold us back. Make sure those beliefs that you know this already, so you don't have to think about it, make sure that doesn't really stand in your way. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said this is one of the greatest laws of the universe. If you think in negative terms, you'll get negative results. If you think in positive terms, you'll achieve positive results. Now, I know you're thinking, I've heard this before. I've heard this already. But I think it's extraordinarily important, especially when we talk about talking to our boards, how we think about our boards and think about the opportunities we have to work with them. Now, here's this little squirrel, and he's on the psychiatric couch getting therapy. And he said, when I learned you are what you eat, I realized I was nuts. Now, the poor little guy, look at him, he's just all upset. What are you telling yourself? You know, realize that this little squirrel, before he learned you are what you eat, he didn't think he was nuts. He was just fine. But then he learned you are what you eat, and he felt he was nuts. So what thoughts are getting into your head? What are you thinking about? Research shows that we have about 60,000 thoughts bouncing around in our brain every day. And I think it's really important that we control those thoughts and look at establishing declarations and affirmations and really consider what we're telling ourselves. And remember that an affirmation is a positive statement asserting a goal that you wish to achieve is already happening. So you might say something like, I've raised $1 million gift. A declaration is a little bit different. A declaration states an official intention to undertake a particular course of action or adopt a particular status. So I am moving towards raising $1 million gift. I like declarations better because, you know, I'll say to myself, I've raised $1 million gift. I'll say, oh, you haven't. You haven't done that yet. And I'll get into more mindset stuff. So I instead want to say things like, I'm moving towards an amazing partnership with my board in raising major gifts for my organization. I'm exploring and celebrating the ways I work with my board to raise major gifts for my organization. When my feet hit the floor in the morning, I say, I love my life. My board is great. You know, when I first heard of this, it seemed too easy to me. I thought, no. Success is about working hard and doing enough of the right things and putting in those hours. Well, actually, if this all seems a little kind of hokey to you, let me put it this way. I'd rather be hokey and successful than cool and a mess. Why does this work? Because the thoughts that we have lead us to the decisions that we make. They lead us to our opinions. Those opinions lead us to our decisions. That leads us to the actions we take. And those actions, my friends, take us to the results that we get. So if you want something different with your board, it starts with you. You must think differently about your board, about what they can and will and are willing to do with you, about the results you'll get together, and that all of this is something that will happen. I look here and I want to, again, you'll notice my son on this. When I talk about what you're telling yourself, this all impacts all aspects of your life. My son is almost 6 foot tall, and he has a 27-inch waist and a 34-inch inseam or something like that. Skinny kid. You look at me standing there next to him, not quite the same. When my son sits down to eat, he says, I don't know, Mom, no matter what I eat, I just can't gain weight. I sit down and I'll think to myself, oh boy, here's a piece of cake. I'm going to see that right on the hips. Now, what am I telling my body to do? Eat cake, put on hips. This picture was taken over a year ago. I am now down almost 30 pounds. Have I done something radical? Yeah. I said to myself, every day in every way, I'm growing stronger, leaner, and healthier. Now, again, you might be thinking, Marcy, this is supposed to be about our boards, not about our mindset. My friends, your success with your board is all about your mindset. Let's look at some of the challenges we're facing today. Oh, my goodness, it's a very difficult economy, very difficult. I don't think we've had since the Great Depression something like this. The interest on our endowments are low. This impacts our budget. The competition is high for money. Oh, boy, in Dane County alone, we have a gazillion billion nonprofits. Competition is high for people's time. Our board members are asked to do so many things. They're kind of tapped out. Our donors are sort of tapped out. Our volunteers, our alums, depending on your nonprofit. We have increased workloads. We've reduced some staff, so now, boy, there's extra burden on us, those that are left. Increased workloads. more costs. Gas is higher, food is higher, energy is higher, and all of that, of course, matriculates into the budgets that we have. Yeah, a lot of challenges. But you know what? This is what I see when I look at this list of challenges. Take a good look at this, friends. VICTIM. Now, some of you might be reacting a bit to this, but being a victim doesn't help us work with our boards or raise money. Have you ever seen a successful victim? Have you ever seen a rich victim? Do you think your board members have gotten to the have advanced to the point they are in their lives and have acquired the wealth they have, or the expertise they have, or the professions they have, be they doctors or lawyers, by being victims? Do you think they want us to talk to them like we're victims? Do you think we need to challenge that victim mentality? And think about who you can control. Can you control what your board members do? No. Can you control what your executive director or your boss does? No. Can you control what your board president does or think? No. Your board members? No. Only you. All of the conversations begin with you. All of the mindset begins with you. Victims blame, victims justify, and victims make excuses. And they spend a lot of emotional energy and time doing it. They rationalize. Well, you can see rationalize, I think, is just rational lies. My ED doesn't want to do whatever. She doesn't want to talk to my board. She won't tell the board they have to help me. She's threatened if I talk to the board without him. They should be putting development as a higher priority. Circumstances and excuses. People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. That's George Bernard Shaw. So, I need to plug here. Here we go. So your mindset and your board. Think about some of these things. My board should just raise money and let me run the place. Or quit asking so many questions. Or quit micromanaging. My board just doesn't get it. I want you to know, friends, these are all things that in my work I hear again and again and again. I don't have the right people on my board. They aren't big enough players. My board just wants to see money come in. They don't want to help me do it. Just give the board the basics. They don't need to see the details. Or we don't need to bother them with all of the details of what's going on. You know, you'll just stir up the nest there. They don't need to hear all of that stuff. You know, the board can fire me. Can't forget that. Or if I get crossways with the board, I could be out of here. My board simply won't ask for money. Marcy, they just won't ask for money. I just can't get them to ask for money. They should be out there asking for money. Or this one's particularly scary. My board doesn't think I can do it. Then we've got another whole thing, set of issues we have to think about. How do we feel about money? Now, some of this stuff goes back well into our childhoods. And understand that when we're talking about money, we are looking at ideas that have been with us all our lives, and also that we don't normally talk about money. You wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, oh, congratulations on that new position. So what's your salary? That just in doing the work we do, we're talking about a topic that's a little bit uncomfortable. And so do me a favor, if you're in a group, I know a lot of you are sitting in rooms as a group. That's a wonderful thing about this. Answer these questions. Money is the root of all, yes, evil. Actually, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. A very different thing. Money doesn't grow on, yes, trees. Rich people are, now here I get a variety of things, greedy, dishonest. Sometimes I get people saying, wonderful, and that's what I want to hear. Not everybody can be rich. There's not enough. Ooh, what a lack mentality that is. Is that somebody that sees the cup half empty or half full? Money doesn't buy love, happiness. It's at either or. You can't be wealthy and happy. Well, you can be. Blank rich. What I hear is filthy rich. Really? Be happy with what you have, honey. You must work hard to earn a living. Why am I spending time with this? Well, if we have issues about money and we're pushing money away, how can we attract something to us that we're pushing away? Because again, the thoughts we have lead us to the decisions we make and create the actions we take and generate the results we get in our lives. So I want you to embrace a different kind of mindset with your board. I'm grateful for their services. I'm grateful for their gifts. I'm grateful that they serve. I feel that they can advise me on many issues. These are things we need to remind ourselves and tell ourselves. Not, oh, my board again. And I know it goes on. I know it goes on. I see them as more than the money or whatever else they can give or do for me. Sometimes in our work, we're writing every contact screen down. If it didn't get written down, it didn't happen. That's the accountability. Yes, I agree with that. But we're writing these things down, and it becomes kind of a process for us. And we sort of forget that these are people. These are people with which we need to build relationships, sincere, authentic relationships. And we need to see our board members for more than what's in it for me, for what they can do for me. And instead, these are partners, friends, and colleagues, volunteer colleagues, with the work that I do. I want them to have a deep understanding of what's going on. I don't want them to have a superficial understanding. Well, they won't take the time to listen. Oh, yes, they will. I know my board respects my work and me. Right now, everybody who's on this line, I am telling you right now, your board respects you and the work that you do, period. You take that with you from our time together today. Period. I am telling you that is fact. If you don't think that's fact, then you just throw that thought out. You say, if your mind says, oh, but I don't know about Harry. He's been on the board a long time, and I think he thinks I'm kind of a new whippersnapper to this stuff and don't really know what I'm doing. I want you to say to your mind, thank you for sharing. Throw it out. Your board respects you and values the work you do. They do. I have interviewed I would say now, I tried to count them up one day. It's well over about 1,200 individual board members, face-to-face in a little room. And I talked to them about their development staff. Most of them say, I'm so grateful they're doing that work. I think it's hard work. I don't know always how to help them. That's what your board feels. They respect and they appreciate what you do. They don't necessarily understand it, but they respect and appreciate what you do. These are some expectations I want you to have for your board. If you ask for advice or help, and you really want it, this isn't a manipulative, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. I believe that. I think that's true. But you need to still respect that advice. Not, well, I'm going to ask them for advice, although I already know which way we're going. We've already decided. So this is really just sort of a courtesy, kind of a, frankly, manipulative thing of making them feel like they have input when really they don't. Do you know what? Folks can see through that 10,000 miles away. If you think you can fool your board, you are only fooling yourself. They may go along with it, but they know what's going on, my friends. So if you ask for advice or help, they will give it to you if you ask sincerely. If you expect them to take part in the development process, they will. If you expect them to care, they will. If you expect them to understand mistakes and help you through them, they will. If you expect them to learn, they will. So part of how you talk to your board is to walk into them with expectations. High expectations of what they will do. Let's shift now to our next topic of the communication style and your board. Please have no hidden agendas. And here I will tell you, I had the opportunity, and I call it an opportunity, to work for one of the most challenging people ever, one of the deans that I worked for, who constantly would say, oh, no, Marcy, we're not going to put that on the agenda. But that's what you want them to, that's where we want to go. No, we'll put this on, and then we'll have this kind of a conversation so that they kind of come around to thinking that this is what we should do, and then it'll sort of be their idea and they'll do it. And I'm like, really? State what you want. State your agenda. No hidden agendas. No manipulative agendas. Use a consent agenda properly. One of the things that helps us with our board and helps the learning and helps the dialogue is to have discussion time in each and every board meeting. So often I see, well, by the time we get through all the business, there's no time left. A consent agenda used properly can take care of so much stuff. It also expects, there's that word again, expects and demands that your board members do something before they come to the meeting. Well, mine don't. You know what? That's not true. Maybe they all don't. But I will tell you what, some of them will. And when they come to the meeting and that consent agenda comes in, it's voted on, it's gone, and they realize other people know what's on it and is aware of what was going on, and they were kind of voting blindly, they'll catch on. They'll get into it. They'll participate. They'll read ahead. Yes, they will. So, but use that consent agenda properly. It's not a place for you to stick in something that you're hoping they don't read and you can wiggle through. No. That's being honest and ethical. And I'm bringing this up because it happens every day. So be honest and be transparent. You know, the word transparent is a popular word. Much harder to do. I don't want to quite say that. That could raise some eyebrows. That could raise some questions. That's the very reason we need to talk about it. If you think your eyebrows will go up, it should be on your agenda. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. I used to tell my kids they would edit things. Well, you know, Mom, yeah, we had a great time at the movie last night. We went and we saw it, and then we got home, and that was fine. Well, I'm glad you had a nice time, honey. Then I find out that, well, in fact, after the movie, they drove around and went to such and such a drive-in restaurant and ran into 16 of their friends and kind of jumped around and were whooping and hollering in the parking lot, and, a cop drove by, but there was no problem. Oh, well, I didn't not tell you that. I didn't lie about that. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. No editing allowed. Be enough. What I mean by that is understand that your organization and what you do is worthy of their time. You are enough. You have a good cause. You're sincere about your cause, and you're enough. Be enough. Take that in with you. Treat your board members like they are major donors. Gee, what a concept. You know, a lot of times they really can be. And I understand that some boards are put together where you have perhaps your social service agency and you have somebody who receives your services on the board. Well, they're not major donor prospects. No, but you know what? I've seen those people, and it happened just a couple of weeks ago when we were celebrating a building addition to a senior center. And there were seniors that walked up and put $2, which was their lunch money for that particular day, into the bucket of donations. That was not why we had that bucket out there. And they were so proud to give up that chunk of lunch money because they wanted to be part of this building project. So they were major donors, of course, has everything to do with relative wealth. So treat all those board members like they're your major donors. And then, of course, the words we use. We'll talk more about all of these a little bit now. I wanted to share this with you. Here are the board members, and they're saying, what are they doing? Well, they can't find their hidden agenda. It only takes a couple of times for something to come up and a board to feel like this was sort of a hidden agenda, where they get very paranoid about what is really going on, what's really happening here. And it takes a while to build that trust back. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. There we go. The words we use. We've talked about our mindset. We've talked about how important that mindset is. But, you know, the words we use define who we are, how we appear to others, how we choose to be seen by ourselves, how we view ourselves. I credit this to Don Gray's English teacher, though I'm sure she's not the first one that said it. But words are containers of power. I don't think any of you out there would debate how quickly we can open our mouths and hurt someone. Johnny, why did you do that? What a stupid thing to do. Our words are containers of power. And we have to really choose our words whether our board members are listening or not. And I want to spend a little bit of time, there we go. I want to spend a little bit of time, and some of you who have been with me before have seen this slide, although I've expanded on it. We still have board members out there. They're still alive and well, my friends, who are going to hit up Joe. Okay. You know, Joe doesn't want to be hit. And in all my years raising major gifts, I've never hit anybody. I've never wrestled them to the ground and pulled out their wallet and gotten my money. I've never put the arm on them. I've never squeezed them. In all the work I've done in agriculture, I've never milked them. And I haven't said to somebody else, you should give, you ought to give, you owe us. I have, and I've done this myself, that I have such a powerful experience, perhaps with hospice is one that's something in my life, that I feel I ought to give to them. It's my right to say that about myself. So you need to be really sure about how you're talking to your board members, the words that you're using, and also the words that your board members are using, talking to others with you. Pick the low-hanging fruit. Who are those folks? Well, a lot of them are our board members. They're the folks that are closest to us. They know us the best. They're probably our past donors, and we refer to them as picking the low-hanging fruit. Really? We have to be careful about the emotion that we put in our words. I like to think about passion. I think passion is a good thing, not drama. There's a huge difference. I wish you'd write this down. Passion, not drama. Passion is, our organization does such great stuff. I really hope that we can find a way for you to participate in the good work that we do. And as a board member, lead our organization to even better and better, a better and better future. Drama is, oh my gosh, you know, if we don't get so many gifts by such and such a time, I don't know how we're going to be able to do this. That's drama. We don't need drama. We need passion. We don't need drama. And likewise, it's repeatedly using these things. When we talk about major donors and we talk about looking at our board members like they're major donors, our major donors, we talk about needing a long time to have those relationships develop to a point where that major gift is something that is appropriate to ask for and we have a good chance of receiving. Likewise, it takes repeated conversations with our board members for them to reach a level of understanding. So if you're in front of the board once and you talk to them about establishing a long gift process, or you talk to them about the way that numbers long-term look and will grow over time and say, well, that's done, can cross that off the list. No, it's going to take several times, and several times perhaps with an executive director or a supervisor who doesn't have that clear understanding. Have those conversations, make the time. Back to these words. You know, I'm not even so excited about prospects, suspects, follow-up, strategy, move you, pitch, close, qualify. I was at a conference once where a couple of gentlemen came up and talked to me, and it was interesting, and I share this story because these guys were completely different. One was kind of a smaller fella, and very neatly dressed in a suit and kind of quiet, not a real boisterous personality. And he walked up to me and he said, Marcy, I so enjoyed in your conversation, in your session about boards, when you talked about the words that we use, because I think it's really important to use those words like create a joyous giver and dream and not use words that are so clinical. He said, I feel like I'm serving on this board because I have an emotional connection, and I want to be able, I'm a big enough guy, which was kind of interesting, seeing he was a real small guy. I'm a big enough guy to be able to use those kinds of words and be okay with it. And I think that feeling like you have to use these clinical or these techie words because you don't want me to feel awkward about using emotional words, I just think that that's off base. I'm very comfortable doing this, especially when I serve on a nonprofit board. The other fellow that walked up to me, and this was all in Vancouver during the course of this conference, was a great big burly guy, could have been a football player. And he came up and he said, I just wanted to comment about these words that we use. I think that it's darn right that we use words that are more emotionally based. I'm very comfortable with that. So I've received support from that. I don't think we have to be afraid to talk about the emotional impact and the emotional relationships we're building. Not that there isn't a place for accountability, and we'll get to that later. So dream, make a difference, gift, consider. Your language is your creativity. Thank you, gratitude, the opportunity to invest. But you know what? You have to mean it. People can smell a fake miles and miles and miles away. Miles away. And likewise, when we're using those, when we're expecting people to do things, we've got to be clear about what those things are. There we go. And when we're creating those, sometimes I get on a roll here and I forget to advance the slide, so excuse me. We have to create our own focus. And what I mean by creating our own focus is being clear on what we want and being sure that we're communicating that. We'll talk about that. When you think about how many times have you been disappointed because somebody hasn't either given you something you wanted for your birthday or your spouse hasn't done something that you wanted them to do, and you sit back and you say, well, I just kind of thought you would know what I want. Really? How many of us have invested energy being angry that somebody doesn't do what we want them to do, but we haven't really communicated it very well? I'll tell you, mind reading is not a skill most board members have. So we have to create that focus, and we have to help them understand what our story is. So seek and circle, provide what tells the story financially, provide the story behind the story, make it a point to acknowledge the people involved or share credit, which is kind of the opposite of metrics. Metrics is who's going to get credit for this, and focus the board members on engagement and stewardship, not asking. Let's spend a little bit more time on all of these. All right. I know you're thinking, seek and circle. Now what's Marcy up to? This is how I start my day. I've got a little seek and circle puzzle I do every day. And if you think about focus, this one is called Keep in Touch, and it wants you to find the words in it. Well, think about it. If you look at that block there with all those letters in it, you can't make anything out of that. If I said, I want you to learn this, you can't make anything out of that, right? So you're bored. You're bringing your board into your organization, and you say, we've got these programs, and we've got these opportunities to invest, and we've got these giving options, and we've got these staff members, and they do this and this and this and this, and we do this on Tuesdays, and we da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's what they're seeing right there. They're seeing that great big old block of letters. Okay? With me on this? But when you start saying, and let's see if I can do this. Ooh, I'm so excited if I can do this. Let me see if you say that one of the things that I want you to focus on is how we transmit our information. So see where I am now? Transmit. Ooh, I just took all of your attention to transmit. And maybe I'll say to them, well, we want to focus on things that are about exchanging our opportunities for their investments. So how do we focus? Well, maybe we have to find something with an X in it. So that means well, this X isn't going to work. You see, I'm there. I don't know if you can see it. No, it's not this X. Come here. Come here, my little button. There it is. Well, let's see. Where is the X? I'm having trouble finding it now. You wouldn't believe this, but I practiced this. Where is the X I need? All right. Well, I'm not going to get focused on that today. I'm not seeing my X. Here it is. Here we go. Oh, now I can focus you all on exchange. Why am I doing this? Every single day when I play Seek and Circle, I am thinking about how this impacts my board, my coaching, everything I do in my day. I have to help people see the focus of what I'm doing. I have to help people focus in. I have been focusing in on it as I get ready to talk to them or get ready to have the board meeting. I have to help them go through the steps and focus in on that. Okay? I think it's really important to think about life as a Seek and Circle puzzle. The fruits and the roots, because too often what we focus on is up here, all of these little, now I want my check. What we focus on are all of these things right here. We focus on all of those fruits. What are those fruits? The fruits are the money. We focus on the money. But my friends, the fruits happen because of the roots. The fruits happen because of everything that happened down here long before we had any fruits. What happens in the roots makes the fruits. Most people don't reach their full potential. Research that shows that over 80% of individuals will never really be happy or successful in the way they'd like to be because we're not focusing on those things that are most crucial to our success. Think about those fruits of our results, not just dollars, but all of our results. Maybe we don't like our results. They're too small. They don't taste good. So what do? We focus more on them. More money, more money, bigger money. When actually, what creates those particular fruits? It's the seeds and the roots. It's what's under the ground that creates what's above the ground. It's what's invisible that creates what's visible. So if you want to see different fruits, you've got to change your roots. Okay? And create that new focus. Use stories to bring data to life and to demonstrate the relationship building process. Tell stories all around your cycles. Make assignments. And I love this word. I learned this from a new ED that I'm working with just last week. Significant, but not difficult. You know that some of our work, it's a simple thank you note or a simple phone call or just a comment about something that's going on. It's not necessarily difficult, but it's a significant connection with somebody that we're trying to engage. Look at working with your board and making those assignments that are significant but not difficult. What data do you want to focus on? And realize that what you measure grows. So back to this whole point about focusing. You want to focus on a situation for clarity. So in other words, what can you do to help people see why the direction you're going on is clearly in line with your mission? If you interview 10 board members and you ask them what the mission are, you'll get 10 different answers. Now, your mission is broad, but we have to be sure that our focus is, for clarity, is on the key things of our mission, and all of our boards are there. Talk to your board about what research shows, so it's not Marcy thinks. And I love Penelope Burke because I always tell Penelope when I say, in my experience, well, and I have a lot of experience, and I think that's a real credible thing, but when Penelope does research, she documents my experience. Yes! When the Center of Philanthropy does research, they document what my experience has shown me. When AFP puts out, these are the things we found as best practice, it documents my experience. There's some wonderful blogs out there that document what my experience is. So talk to your boards about this is what research shows. Use those tools. And use my cycle, which we'll get into in just a minute, to talk about that relationship building process. And make sure that every single board meeting talks about what each and every one of your board members are doing around that development cycle. And I'm a big believer in board surveys. And my board surveys, my friends, my board surveys are truly anonymous. When you go into, what's that called? The monkey thing. Oh, I wish I was with my chapter. SurveyMonkey. You can set it up so that you can say it's anonymous, but you still got some kind of number that takes you right back to whose email gave. So they're not anonymous. You can disconnect that or deactivate it or whatever the word is. And I make sure when I do a survey, this is part of the whole truth and nothing but the truth. When I do that survey, I have it truly an anonymous survey. I don't know who answered. And I'll tell you when it comes out, when I'm hounding people to respond to the survey. Hounding isn't a very nice word, is it? When I'm reminding people of their opportunity to participate in the survey. So I'm sending that reminder email. Hello, everybody. There's a couple more days. We really would like to get all of you into this. People will send me emails back. Board members will send me emails back, and they'll say, Marcy, I already sent mine in. Why are you contacting me again? And I send them a note back and saying, because I told you this would be anonymous. This is anonymous, so I don't know that you've responded. Thank you. Do you know how powerful that is? I sincerely don't know. I believe in anonymous surveys. Set that sucker up so it's anonymous. Okay. And interviews, either with consultants or even on your own, or as a development director. How do you get it more engaged with your board? Have a quarterly sit-down with each and every one of those board members. Quarterly too much, or you've got, 28 board members? Make it twice a year. But make it a routine, expected thing. They know it's coming. Once you're going to sit down, just say, hey. Hey. How's it going? Research has shown, don't you love it? Research has shown, this was done by Harvard, that even focusing on an unpleasant one, that when you focus on the task at hand, even an unpleasant one, you're happier. So this deals with a little bit of that problem business. When you're asking your boards to participate and help you solve problems, when you focus on that problem and you completely focus on that problem with your board, you will find solutions. You know you will. You'll find courses of action, and you'll be united on what you're doing to try to solve these, or the one or two or three things you're going to do. And you're all going to feel really good about having addressed the problem. Even when you focus on a yucky thing, when you focus on what you need to deal with now, you're happier. So finally, launching board member participation. We've talked about having that new vocabulary for development. When you talk to your board about raising friends instead of dollars, it puts a different concept on this. Notice I didn't use the word spin. I don't like that word. I don't like pitching people. I don't like spinning things. Because to me that feels like I'm manipulating. And you know what? If I have really good stuff for them to invest in, I don't have to pitch it. And even if that stuff, and I'm going off my notes here, where's my time? Even if that stuff is the operating fund, it's another thing I hear, I can't get anybody to invest in the operating fund, or the board doesn't want to talk about operation funds. When you talk about the value and service that you provide, and you help people understand there's a cost of doing business, and you need their help and support with meeting that cost, and you're completely transparent about what it is you're asking them to help you with, you will get gifts to the operations. When you're launching that board member participation, you need to look long-term. You need to always talk about the fact that you're looking for the giving you'll experience long-term. But you have to stress that each and every touch that you make and your board member makes and your receptionist makes and your clinician makes and the doc makes and the CNA makes and the janitor makes, every touch is important in creating that authentic relationship. Understanding that cycle and where specifically you as board members can contribute. Bringing this in as a continuing part of the board meeting process. Have we heard this before? Yes. I am focusing you in on that, so it's purposely in more than one of my slides. Aha! It needs to be a regular part of your agenda. Define expectations of the board development committee. I never used to be a big fan of a development committee because I feel like each and every one of your board members should feel that this is an integral part of what they do for your organization. If you have the development committee, it's way too easy to say, oh, that's the development committee's job. I don't have to do that. No. I think the development committee can address specific things like evaluating events, determining new and exciting opportunities for support, how to talk about those opportunities for support, how to put them into different price points so that they can appeal to your prospective givers. But all of the board is responsible for development. And the other thing that a board development committee can do is it allows you, I think, to bring non-board members into the mix and have them serve on a committee of the board without necessarily being a board member. And it's a great way to engage people you would like to be on your board in a smaller way and have them have a role in the development process. Or you know what, they may not want to be on the board. They may say, no way, Jose, do I want a bunch of those regular meetings. But I'll serve on a committee that only meets once a quarter. Okay? So how do we engage them in that process? Well, you know, I love this. Thanks to Doug Lawson, philanthropy is the mystical mingling of a joyous giver, an artful asker, and a grateful recipient. And today I will very quickly, I used to call this the cycle of successful development. It's so much more than that, my friends. This is kind of a way to run our lives. And I call it now the cycle of successful relationships. And let's take a minute to kind of go around this, and I'll go really quick. Here, we have to start by having people who consider our values and share our interests. And here, the biggest point I want you to take away from this is help your board understand not to assume. Don't assume someone doesn't share your values, and don't assume they do. You need to ask them. You need to look for signs. You need to have your board members be empowered with how they can tell that story so they can begin the conversation with you and for you. Why is it they serve on your board? Ask that question. Go around the room. And I'm not seeing if that's not a test of can you repeat the mission statement. Well, because we blah, 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 blah. No. Why do they serve on this board? What is the unique connection? What is the unique thing that inspires them to sit down around that table and be with you? That's the story I want them to tell. When somebody says to your board member, what's new? I want you to have helped them have an answer to begin that conversation and to share that story anywhere and to be constantly alert to opportunities to match a giver's needs with your interests, with your organization. Then we have this wonderful place where our board members can help us so much in creating that joyful giver. When they help us create those experiences, big or small, to involve prospective givers in our organizations. You know, we say that it takes 6 to 9 meaningful contacts to move from here to here. Okay, do you see where I am? Well, if you want to work with a pile of donors, prospective givers, and you want to do all of those 6 to 9 touches yourself, how are you going to get it done? If you talk to your board members about the important role they play in this part of the cycle, in helping you create those experiences, in helping talk about what you need, in relating the dollars to the impact they have, in inviting their friends to activities, in helping you meet those folks, in that quick phone call that says, I think that you might be interested in our organization. I'd sure appreciate it if you'd give Marcy 20 minutes of your time to just talk about it. I promise you she's not going to ask you for money. This is just a conversation. Helping you set up those meetings. Now, here, you notice I'm not going all over that. I don't think asking is a great place to use your board members. They hate it. They don't want to do it. They equate fundraising with asking. Now, is that 100% of them? No. They're also the board members that say, I'm not afraid to ask for money. Well, enough said. Those that will make that artful ask, yeah, I'm not saying that you might not have some long-term board members or some people who are comfortable doing it, but they should speak that ask only if they're comfortable. That is not the place to engage your board. But your board can join you on that call and be a testimony of a similar level of giving. They can join you on that call or beforehand and talk to people about why they give and support. And then when those gifts are received of any size, this is so important, and we forget it because we're busy being that grateful recipient. Here is another place to engage your board. They can first and foremost, with you, be genuinely grateful. Be genuinely grateful, my friends. I cannot tell you how many major donors have said to me that a board member has thanked them, and he was so sincere, or she was so sincere, and they could tell that she really was delighted that they had invested. Wow, that's powerful. And you know that when those things happen right, they come right back around and want to be a joyful giver with us again. So to maximize our time today, and it's ticking away, I have, my team got this done. I'm so excited. It happened yesterday. My team has put on my website a place where you can click and you can get a complimentary chapter of Chapter 6 of my book. And Chapter 6 of my book is an overview of the cycle. It's a long chapter, and I know it will help, so please head to my website when you can and jump in and download this chapter, and it will talk to you more about how you can engage your board members using that cycle. Okay? And so launching this, so use that board again as joyful givers and grateful recipients to help you there. With those personal visits, create a worksheet. Talk to your board members about their story, about the actions that they are comfortable taking. Did you hear that? That they are comfortable taking. You know, for some people, picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, I've asked, Marcy to stop by and see you, is absolutely part of their day. For other people, they might not be comfortable with that at all. But writing a note that says, thank you, that might be just fine for them. So it's what is significant but not difficult, and try to give them at least 2 individuals that you've thought through steps that they can do. At each board meeting, now this is the 3rd time I've brought this up, I'm focusing you on this. Do you see that? Share experiences with their calls that they've made. Look at new giving options. Create a continuing list of thoughtful actions to take to each phase together for the next assignment. Do a stewardship piece. Do something that involves the grateful recipients. I have been working with boards where they come in, they sit down, and they're expecting to see it. There's a client of mine in Dubuque who has a little postcard that's typed out the name of the person and the address. Then there's a little note card with it, paper clipped on the back with an envelope and the stamp, and the return address is on it. And then that board member reads a little bit about it, what the point of the note is supposed to be. Now, each board member does it a little differently. Some of them just look at it, set it down. Oh, they're the thoughtful ones. They want to think about what they're going to write, maybe do it over lunch. Others of them will sit down and do it right away, but during the course of that board meeting, they do it. Let's jump on to accountability. All of these things, we need to have accountability. And accountability needs to fit that long-term major gift of success. It needs to use metrics to support the process, not drive the relationship. So, Joe, I'm here today to ask you for a gift because you're on my list of the 7 asks I have to make this month. No, it's not the right time, Joe, but you're on my list of the 7 asks I need to make this month. No, that is lack. Lack mentality is metrics-driven. Abundance mentality is metrics-supported, where the metrics help you manage and keep on top of and make sure that you are engaging in a thoughtful way all of the folks that you need to work with. They're supporting your process, not interfering with it. Transitioning your organization from a numbers focus to a donors focus. Retaining expectations of a level of activity by the staff and the board. Okay, all right. Oh, good, I'm here. I would now like to ask you to participate in a second polling question. And based on the conversation that we've just done, how many of you are going to do something differently now? And this is a little bit of a trick question. What will you do differently? Yep, I'm seeing the change. I love this. How many are going to change your mindset, are going to initiate conversations with your board or your ED, are going to seek more feedback, are going to address a challenge, are going to download the chapter, are going to create a new focus point, or do all of the above? Excellent. 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 I'm seeing all of the above happen. You know, one of the things I missed earlier is this whole idea of talking about seeking more feedback. One of the things that I like to do is encourage all of you to go out and talk to your board members and just say, in that, I mentioned it, but I didn't specifically say feedback. I'm sorry, I missed that. When you're having that quarterly or that, I want you to say to people, so how do you think this is working? Is there something that I can do better? Is there something that I can do differently? Truly, the more that you ask people for feedback, and boy, is it scary, because you're going to get some feedback that's not positive. This is so crazy, but I will distribute a feedback form when I do a session, and I'll have 200 people in the room, and one of them will say, Marcy, I didn't like the way you did such and so, or I think your cycle is dumb. And I will just go, oh, they think my cycle is dumb. But I had 199 that loved it. Now, really? And it's human nature. Again, that's when our mindset kicks in to give us trouble. That's when we have to say about that one piece of feedback, thank you for sharing. I've heard it. Now I need to evaluate it. Is there something that I need to do with this piece of feedback, or doesn't it really fit? Okay? So if it's this odd one that's against all of the rest you've gotten, well, that person just has a problem with it for whatever their reason is. They think that mindset stuff is this woo-hooey kind of stuff, and they're not going to do it. Or you can't control them. So you say, thanks for sharing, and you don't worry about it. What I do find interesting is a lot of times the people that have the biggest complaints, the room is too cold, they didn't like the food, and, everything else isn't working. And you want to kind of say, I wish they're the ones that usually also, too, don't put their name on it. And boy, do I wish they did, because they're the ones that I would love to be able to reach out for and say, let's talk about your mindset. Okay. Jessica, my dear, could we please, at this point in time, take a few questions if there are some?
Absolutely. And just a reminder to our attendees, if you do have a question, just click on the Q&A button in the upper left and type in your question and click Ask to submit it. And we'll take a few here and then wrap up at the end. First, we had someone make a comment, if you care to comment on it further. They said, if you do a good board orientation, a lot of the excuses should be taken care of. We forget that serving on a board is adult education, and we need to use that approach when training our volunteers.
Okay, I would love to comment on that. That is an excellent comment, and whoever put that in there, thank you, thank you, thank you. I did have a client who brought on, first off, the only way you got off the board was to die, and we tried to address that by having some term limits, because we didn't have a lot of turnover, thankfully. I mean, we didn't have a lot of people dying, but when we did start bringing new board members on, the whole idea of an orientation session was sort of a foreign object. And we did the orientation, and the questions that came out of that were a little bit scary for the organization. And bravo for getting them asked. And then that's an opportunity to address them and answer them. The only thing I would add to what you're saying is I agree wholeheartedly with what you say, and a thorough orientation is good. But understand that you eat, sleep, breathe your organization all the time. So when you're going through these things, you're talking about things you're very familiar with. For some of your board members, this is a whole lot of stuff that they're hearing once. So repetition is needed, and repetition is a good thing. They've heard it once, but don't assume that they got it all or learned it all that first time. You will need to repeat those things. And you can also refer to, remember on your orientation, we talked about blah, blah, blah. It's in your folder from your orientation session. Or it comes up at the next meeting. You had a question on this. Well, remember, it's in your orientation binder if you look at page 20, whatever. Excellent comment. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Next question we have, Marcy, thank you for the motivating session. I'm unfamiliar with a consent agenda. Would you mind clarifying what that is?
Oh, okay. It's a governance question, and I would Google it, too, because I'm the development professional, and this is something that all the EDs out there would be and the leadership would be much more familiar with. But a consent agenda is basically an agenda, my understanding, where ahead of the board meeting, you sit down and you say, for example, approving the minutes. Do we have to, at the board meeting, we know we have to approve the minutes. So do we have to, at the board meeting, say, you've all received a copy of your minutes, have you had a chance to read them over? Is there any objections to the minutes? Or if not, can we approve the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? And then somebody goes, I move, and then somebody else says, second, and then you say, all in favor, we approve the minutes. Okay. Then maybe there's, there's another item on the agenda that's really kind of like that, where it's sort of a routine thing that you do. Well, you can list all of those things in what's called a consent agenda. And then all of that is sent out ahead of the meeting. And then instead of addressing all of those items individually, the board president or the chair just says, now you've all received the consent agenda. First off, they ask, do any of you want anything taken off the consent agenda? That's very important. So it's a chance for the board to say, no, I had an issue with the minutes, and I don't want us to just agree to that with everything else on the consent. I want to look at the minutes, okay? Then the chair says, fine, we'll take the minutes off the consent agenda. Then he or she says, okay, now, all those that agree with the consent agenda, and then you approve of that whole agenda. So in one fell swoop, you can handle a whole bunch of voting on a bunch of routine stuff. But there's always an opportunity to take something off that consent agenda. I hope that helped.
Thank you, and I think we'll do one more question at this point. The question is, when your executive director is not a strong solicitor, what do you do?
Okay. There are a couple things. Thank you for that question. And there are a lot of them that aren't. Again, I think that your executive director can do a lot of things. First off, I'm not sure. What I don't know from the question is if you who are writing this are the director of development, or if you are, if the executive director, if there is no director of development, so that whole kind of development responsibility falls on that executive director who, is responsible for development and everything else that happens, and taking out the trash and filling the bird feeders, as so many of our poor executive directors are when you're in small shops. So I'm not quite sure what the whole context is, so I'm going to answer it two ways. One is, if there is no director of development, that's when I think that your executive director, if they really are uncomfortable making an ask, first off, hopefully try to get them some training in the whole process. Make sure that they take the time to create that joyful giver before they're asking, because that's kind of like the old shotgun marriage proposal, somebody just met you. Maybe this isn't a good analogy. I don't know, but the shotgun proposal is where they just met you. Hi, Marcy, will you marry me? Excuse me? And you liken that to, hi, my name is Marcy. How about $1 million? I think those asks are pretty darn hard. So help your executive director understand that ask is much more comfortable when they have taken the time to thoughtfully and artfully bring that person along as a joyful giver. And the main thing there is to start talking about these kinds of dollars have this kind of impact. So, $500 feeds 25 people, or a $25,000 gift endows a scholarship each year, or whatever, but the dollars that are needed to do the specific impact. And then also stress that the executive director can do a lot by having that vision. And what the executive director really adds to the major gift process is to be able to say to somebody, with your help, with your gift, with your investment, I can do that. And having that piece of it is so important. It's such a crucial role of the executive director. But if the executive director needs to be the one making that ask, try to empower them. And, of course, the three famous words, would you consider? So help your executive director find the words, would you consider? Otherwise, perhaps there is a board member who's comfortable speaking, would you consider? That can help the executive director with that part if they truly are not comfortable doing it. I've had teaching and training in my time. I've had people come to me who say they get physically sick before they have to make an ask. You know what? Life is too short. If that's just not something that's in your DNA, None of the, all the training in the world isn't going to do it. And there are people who I have worked with and who have tried and practiced, and it's just not part of who they are. That's okay. There are ways around it. Now, if you're the director of development and you're asking this question, then I say you speak that ask. Your executive director is there to support you, to put that long-range vision down, to say how important your gift is, to say how much this donor means to them and their organization, to say how grateful they are, and you can be the one that within that conversation says, so, we've talked about your amazing role with our organization. You understand that your gift is important for us accomplishing this. Would you consider a gift of $10,000 to do Y? You can speak that ask. So I hope that was helpful. So Jessica, you'd like me to move on at this point?
We do have some more questions, but for the sake of time, do you think it'd be best to address those at the end?
Oh, 119, yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Onward we go. Okay. Case studies. I can do these relatively quick. These are all true. These all happened. I have tried to change the names and locations and types of nonprofit to protect the innocent. That came off an old TV show for those of you that are a little older. Case study number 1. A new development officer has been hired. So a new development. She's new. Well, it wasn't she. The executive director feels that the board should be asking for more money and wants the development officer to get them to take a larger role. What's the best way to proceed? We've talked about this. First and foremost, the executive director needs to allocate time in the meeting for the new development officer to partner with him or her to talk about the cycle, to set up those times one-on-one with the board members to work through their own worksheets. It's also a great way for the development officer to get to personally know the board members. 3, what we did is we spent time with the board at each part of the cycle. We did 4. We gave steps specifically focused on long-term, and we helped those board members understand what their role was short-term to get the long-term results. There was accountability at every board meeting. What were those board members doing? 2 years later, they raised $5 million for a new building. It was an unheard of amount of money for this organization. The new development officer and the executive director were a great team. Now, the flip side of that coin, when does this fail? Well, when your executive director is threatened by the relationships that the director of development needs to have with the board. Conversely in that, if the executive director is constantly saying, I don't want you talking to the board, I don't want you to have relationships with the board, that's a recipe for disaster. And a lot of times those directors of development leave. How to get around that a little bit is include the executive director on those calls, include the executive director on those plans, include the executive director in the process. It's a great way to help. All right, case study number 2. The executive director is leaving. Now, I'm not saying here why, is it good or bad? This was an agency. While the search is underway, the board is asking the director of development, who they know, and they've worked with this director, so they're asking him for a deeper access and a more active role during this transition while they search. I will say the director of development does not want the job. That's important. So she sees what needs to happen in the interim. Yes, it was a she. But she isn't sure how to go about it or how much to say. What should she do? Ooh, you know what this is about? Passion, not drama. Passion, not drama. What I mean by that is this is the time where that director of development needs to talk about what needs to happen to move donors forward, not the last executive director didn't do this or that. That's called gossip. You don't want to do that. Not what didn't go right in the past, not what's going to, Passion, not drama. And jump in there. Don't be afraid to jump in there and move those relationships forward during this time because there are giving priorities that you can talk about and can be met that don't need that executive director to be in place. And in your head, I want you to adopt a mindset that says, I like the new executive director, even before they come. Set yourself up to succeed with that person. Come on. You know you can set yourself up to also say, boy, I don't know what this is going to be. Who are we going to get in there now? That's this devil you know business? Nonsense. And then when that new executive director comes on, jump in there and say, I cannot wait to introduce you to all of the wonderful relationships I have and have you play an active role with them. and make it your business to have that new executive director be successful. What happened in this case is they made a pile of money when the executive director was not in place. That new ED came on, it was very engaged, and it was marvelous moving forward. Now, oftentimes I see something other than this happening when, again, that executive director is threatened by those relationships and just kind of wanted everything to stop until they got in place. That can really set an organization back. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to move to our third case study. A new staff member has been hired to take on the development leadership role after a successful capital campaign. Folks, this is so classic. There's a good campaign. Some other organization lures your marvelous director of development away. Some development directors actually use campaigns to try to get themselves into a better job, in a better spot. So they use a successful campaign to move on. That's kind of yucky in a way, but I get it. I understand. And it happens. So you're coming in now, and this happens more often than I can tell you. We didn't quite get it all right during the campaign, so now the campaign's over, and whoops, oh golly, we've got some expenses we hadn't counted on, and the board wants you to make this up in the annual fund. Here's a new person. There are a couple of different things going on here. First off, she was afraid to say anything because she thought the board would see her as not knowing what she was doing. That's just strictly mindset. That's getting up in the morning, putting your feet on the ground and saying, I am a worthy and successful development professional. I know what I'm doing. When that little voice says, you don't know what you're doing, say thank you for sharing and forget about it. What should she do in here, and what are the steps here? Is communications, communications, communications. And also, I think it does, first off, start with your executive director. If your executive director would like to sweep this problem under the rug, then it's a question of just continuing to talk about the facts and to have honest conversations with donors to see if there aren't a few you can go back to who will address this problem with a unique and close perspective with your organization. Also, tell your group that this is something that happens a lot of times, that you can, work it and work it and work it, and you can miss something as you go through those new budgets. And we just have to, deal with it and start looking at solutions. How can we do some of these dollars from the annual fund? Yes, but how can we also perhaps have a special event, a one-time event, or a special approach just to a few key people? That's what she did. They made up this budget, and they also put some plans in place to reduce costs and what's the word I'm trying to find? Stagger the timeline for incorporating some of the new things that they were going to do. They stretched that timeline out so that they could adopt a budget that better fit what was going on after the campaign. Now, this has also got some real bad stories. In this case, it worked, but there's also times when you don't talk about it, you don't talk about it, you don't talk about it, and you got a mess. All of a sudden, you're in the red, you're in a pickle, you're in a problem. And you've either got these crisis calls out to somebody that say, save us. You've got major problems by not dealing with this one. You cannot sweep this one under the rug. You cannot. The rug is not big enough. It's going to be this big lump under the rug, and it's not going to happen. And what's happened too often in those cases is the development professional ends up leaving because it's just that big of a mess. So this is one where communications is really important. I want to show you in the little time I have left this picture. This is Guy and Kathy Gottschalk, my husband Ken, and Bucky Badger. I met Guy when a faculty member said to me, Marcy, I have this cranberry grower who's interested in doing something to honor his dad. Now, how many times have we started off meeting somebody with nothing more than interested in doing something to honor somebody, right? Doing something. Because of the relationships that we built over time, over the course of 20 years, not only did he become a very, very major supporter and endow the first chair, but he also ended up being president of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. And this is starting from somebody who we never would have even been engaged with if he hadn't wanted to do something. It's these 20-year-long stories that have benefits in so many ways that you need to tell your board, or you need to hear from others and try to share with your board. where's my time? Really quickly. These are Kikkoman food folks, the soy sauce folks. And what's important about this one is they were trying to do a gift when 9/11 happened. And they said, we just don't know the impact this is going to have on us. And there again, we worked with our board, and we talked to our board about would they consider letting Kikkoman have a totally, if this thing doesn't work, this is still honorable, because the Japanese are such honorable people. They are just wonderful people to work with. And so we literally wrote a memorandum that said, if for some reason 9/11 impacts soy sauce, we'll change this whole thing to a different kind of gift. Well, as it turns out, it was not an issue at all. But again, as we work with our board and the board of Kikkoman, we really had to talk through some of those specific things that were driven by the unique things they wanted to accomplish and the timing. The points I want you to take away: it takes time, overtime, to engage your board. Quarterly conversations are good. It takes more than once. I hope you see some of these things repeating that I want you to focus on. Start from a mindset that the board wants to help, supports you, and respects you. Authentically respect the board. That be spelled right. Engage others with you in deepening the relationships with the board. This isn't a one-man show. This isn't, look at Marcy, she's wonderful. Your job is to engage others. It doesn't matter what your metrics say. Using surveys, interview, etc., draw out the areas where your board needs a deeper understanding. Never assume. I had a client that had long-term, very dedicated board members and volunteers, very dedicated. As we went through the campaign and we started putting together the case statement, and we'd say, well, so-and-so many such and such are served each month, or so-and-so many meals, and we'd have these people who were so long involved saying, really? I didn't know that. Don't assume. Bounce challenges and opportunities off of a few board members to get their advice, and also to partner with them to help sharing with the whole board. A lot of times this is good to happen before the board meetings. Keep the conversations open, honest, and complete. No manipulation. Ask them to evaluate you, your interactions, your progress. Board members will focus on what you share with them. They may ask for a return on investment. I think sometimes that's because they don't know what else to ask for. That's what it's always been. But give them so much more. And mission moments shouldn't just be about, this is what we've done. Mission moments should engage them. It should include them. Use my cycle to engage your board members. Add accountability for both staff and volunteers. The bigger your why, the easier your how. What I mean by that is the larger you dream, the easier it will be to get there, my friends. Because when you really believe in what you're doing, you'll be believed. Have you ever tried to convince somebody of something you don't quite buy yourself? Honey, if you make your bed every day, it's going to make you a better person. Well, I happen to believe that, so that's not a good example. When you believe, you'll be believed. I'm not finding one right now because we're running out of time. I want to share this quote with Steve Jobs. What's truly important, friends? Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, now listen to this, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure. Oh, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if somebody laughs at me? What if somebody doesn't think well of me? These things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what's truly important. I'm going to go on the line here as I'm going over in my time and tell you, and I shared this with Jessica before the call. Last Thursday I had to go in and have a mammogram because I had a lump. Holy smokes was I scared. It's nothing, and I'm fine and well and don't have to worry about it another second. But does that bring into focus what's really important, my friends? What's really important? And I would close again by, we're running over, but I'm happy to stay on the line for a few minutes and answer more questions. And to just say again, if you haven't had a chance, please download my chapter. But I'd like to leave you with two things. Invest in joy. Invest in joy. And choose, because you create your life, choose to be amazing today. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you very much, Marcy. And we are a minute or two over, but we have a few questions, and so we'll get to a couple here and wrap up here in a couple minutes. One question, what do you mean by show creativity in your asking cycle?
Oh, thanks for asking that. What I mean by show creativity is that what I have found with donors is that when we are in that point in the cycle, I'm so glad you asked this question. When we're at that point in the cycle where we're being that grateful recipient, where we're thanking them, if our idea of thanking them is, well, all of the right people have written thank you notes, well, we've sent them the report of what their fund is doing, they've got the numbers, well, they got their tax information. But if we show creativity, in other words, if we find unique and engaging ways to really involve them and get them to understand the impact that their gift has had. If we, bring them out to the Habitat for Humanity site and they see the progress we've made, if we introduce them to the student who got their support, if we show them somebody who is living a positive life because our domestic abuse program helped get her back on track and she's willing to talk about that story. If it's not even a personal one, if we can tell them a story from a client whose name we can't share because of confidentiality. But I'm saying be creative in showing people that you're grateful for their support and how impactful their gift was. Think outside the thank you note box. And it might be as simple as that's a great time for your board members to call. A story. I happened to be in a person's home picking up Bucky books to sell for a band fundraiser. And while I was there, the couple got a call and they said, oh, Marcy's here, let's let it go to the tape, or the recording thing. Well, the call went something like this. Hi, this is Joe, and I'm a member of the XYZ board. And the two of them exchanged looks, husband and wife. And I could tell that they were saying, oh, yeah, what's this going to be? Boy, here we go. And I'm just calling to say thank you for the gift that you sent in for us. I really, now this is how the call went. This was not, hi, this is Joe. I am calling tonight. He was clearly not reading a script, stammered around a little bit. I'm just calling to say thank you and, well, to just let you know that, I serve on this board because I really think what we do is important, and I thank you again for your gift. Oh, and if you need to reach me, you can reach me at 608-238-4024. So then bye and thank you. Quick. Well, what happened after that call? He looked at her and said, wow, that was really nice. She said, yeah, that was really great. I really think that organization does a great job. And he said, so do I. And I was kind of thinking that, yeah, she said, I was wondering when the next shoe was going to fall. And, it didn't. Isn't that something? We should support that organization again. Honest to God, I am telling you true. By the time they got done reacting to that board member's call, they had decided to make another gift. And the poor board member went to tape and didn't even have any idea he had done it. That's being creative. That's being creative and doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcy. We have two more questions, and then we'll wrap up for today. The next question is, how can we talk about long-term development vision without simultaneously addressing board governance? If we treat these things as mutually exclusive, aren't we creating an additional obstacle for ourselves?
I guess I'm misunderstanding this a little bit. You're stumping me a little bit because I do believe in board governance. I do believe that board governance is extraordinarily important, and I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that board governance is also about that fiscal responsibility and that accountability and the fact that the board needs to look at the financials and needs to know what's going on and needs to be able to tell that financial story. In other words, let me try to find an example here. Say the board is looking at their financials, and it's very clear that if we don't raise some money, we're going to have to shut ourselves down. We can't keep the lights on. Well, how does that play into a long-term development vision? Well, when you're going out and you're talking to people, when you're creating that joyful giver, And you need to make that ask truly before the time is right. You may need to make that ask on the first call, or you ain't going to be around next month. Well, the way to keep that authentic and embrace that long-term vision is what you would say to a donor at that point is, you know what, Joe, I sure wish that I had a chance to really have you experience all the great things my organization does. But right now, we're in a bit of a pickle. We are in a situation where, because of some things that we couldn't control or could, and because of some things we're addressing, and here's briefly what they are, we are on the short haul in need of some support right now. So we're asking you to consider a gift of X to help us through this period of time. Now understand that our board has this long-term vision and has these steps in place for addressing this problem and these steps in place to see that it doesn't happen again. But there are times that you need to, that's how you keep the authenticity of the long-term vision when you have a short-term crisis like that. And I don't believe board governance in any way goes against the long-term artful development process. I think that they go hand in glove. You know, there's nothing that, to me, screws up long-term development processes than not having a board that has decent terms. You need to get that new blood in constantly, or it gets stale and stuck in a corner. So I don't know that I quite answered that question. You can email me offline if I missed it entirely, but that would be my answer, that yes, board governance and long-term development success go hand in glove. All right, next question, Jessica.
Thank you. This will be our last question for today. I've been taught that the board chair should run the meeting, and I should simply be there for clarification or input. I think all of this information is great, but how do I get the board chair on the same page?
Ah, that's an excellent question. That is an excellent question. And if you email me, I can put you in touch with an executive director who does an extraordinary job of this. It's a couple extra steps is what it is. And it means that you need to sit down with your board chair before that meeting. And you have to have the meeting before the meeting where you go over the agenda, where you go over what are the outcomes you need to get out of this topic item or out of this topic item, where you say to him or her, I want to be sure you're not blindsided. We might get this kind of pushback. But basically, you come in, you make sure that that board chair has all of the details before that meeting so that they can run the meeting. And the two of you have agreed on what you want to have as outcomes. So it's investing that time with your board chair. Very, very important. And I'll give you a great example of this. There's one of my clients who I was asked to come in and meet with the board, the executive director. Here, they're doing it right from the start. The executive director was interested in hiring me to help do board training. And so when she called me in to come and sit down with them and do what I call this kind of session that I do to see if we're all fit, she made sure her board chair and her incoming board chair were there. So it was the executive director, the development officer, the current chair, and the incoming chair. And they sat there, and I will tell you, the first thing out of the board chair's mouth is, I hate to ask for money. I hate fundraising. So I'm not really excited about hiring you. Okay. And by the time we were done with this conversation and I went through the cycle with them and I said that I didn't think the board members were good for asking at that part. And, you know, we talked about their role as creating a joyous giver and their role doing stewardship. And the executive director was right in there on this. But she made sure he had all the time he needed to talk to me and really be set on having me on board and what exactly I was going to do. She could have just done it, but she made sure he was in that meeting. Then, fast forward, they hired me. We had our first board meeting, and she's sitting there. He runs the meeting, so he's running the meeting, and he says, now I'd like to introduce the development consultant we've just hired. And let me tell you, when she first sat down and talked to me, I was not too excited about this. But I think you are going to find that Marcy is one of the best assets we can have in our organization. And I support her ideas for how we approach people and where we play our role, and you're going to enjoy this presentation. Well, I almost fell off my chair. What a wonderful thing for him to say. But see how this executive director brought him in through the entire process. He genuinely supported me, and it's been, it's just been a fun relationship, and we're going great guns. So it's all about engaging that person before the meeting and really having it together on what's going to happen. Okay?
Well, thank you so much, Marcy, and that is all the time we have for today. To close things out, I do want to remind everyone of our next webinar coming up on August 1st, How Planned Giving and the Annual Fund Work Together. For more information on this webinar and all of the webinars, you could go to aftnet.org. And at this point, I would like to ask you all to take a moment to fill out the brief survey that you should see on your screen. We really appreciate your feedback and use this in planning future events. The survey will loop so everyone at your location can fill it out. On behalf of AFP, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today and for your great questions. I would also like to thank Marcy for sharing her expertise. This concludes today's session. To end this call, you can simply hang up.